Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 5 of the Denver Bronco Roundup. We're a proud podcast of the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. Man, big show coming in, and might as well enter in my co-host, Mr. Jody Moncrief. How we doing, sir?
Evening, Keith. Doing great tonight. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Ben, we missed you, so we should catch up, man. How was your 4th?
It was good. Didn't really do much. Actually, we did. We went out of town. Went and seen my grandma. She got
There
to
you
meet
go.
our new daughter. So that was cool.
Very good, very good. Always good catching up with family, getting a
Yep.
little grandma and the grandkids time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, fantastic, man.
How about
Well,
you?
been busy, man. It's I've been working on getting an old vintage trailer up to snuff and trying to get that all brought back to life, I guess you could say. We're dealing with some hot temperatures. We did thunderstorms all last week, but hey, we're in the middle of summer, and that's okay because that means just right around the corner we're going to have training camp. Then we're going to have preseason games, and before you know it, we're talking week 1, buddy. So
Yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait.
the dog days of summer, this is the time of year when I was, in little league, I was out on the field, so
Right.
it didn't get those fall schedules and those cool evening games. We got summer about noon, 1 o'clock games,
Yep.
so this always brings me back to football as it is. So hey, I just wanted to talk a little bit. I don't know if you got to see, but we have some Hall of Fame candidates up for recognition, I guess you could say, for the Denver Broncos. Did you happen to check that out, bud?
I did. 3 of them.
3 of them. What did you think of the list?
All 3 long overdue. I mean, Randy Gradishaw should have been in years ago. I mean, if he
Yep.
played on the Steelers or the Vikings, or the Cowboys and great defenses back in the day,
Yeah.
he'd already be in. Dan Reeves, I mean, he took this team to 3 Super Bowls. I mean, he did lose
Correct.
them all, but he also went to a 4 Super Bowl with the Falcons. So, I mean, he's been to 4 Super Bowls. And what can you say about Mike Shanahan? Led us to 2 back-to-back Super Bowls, probably the 2 greatest Broncos teams of all time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a tough list not to be not to be excited about, and like you said, almost upset. Randy Gradishar should have been in years and years and years ago. What a great point, the fact that hey, if he was on one of those big name teams, the Cowboys, the Steelers, he would have the Vikings even, you know what I mean? He would have been in years and years ago,
Right.
And then Dan Reeves. I'll kind of relate these two together because, quite honestly, Dan Reeves shouldn't have to go after his passing. He shouldn't have to be recognized after his passing. He should have been in there before. It seems like that's what we're always doing, and we're always chasing behind in the Hall of Fame. These gentlemen need to be recognized when they're still living, not
Yeah, it
when they've
happens
just been passed.
way too many times.
Way too many times. So tying that together, unfortunately, Dan Reeves didn't get that honor. Mike Shanahan still has that opportunity. And I know that Mike Shanahan's not in, at least as far as I've seen, any reports of ill health or anything like that. But my goodness, let's get the man in. He's an innovator. He's really, probably about 50% of the offenses in the league,
Right.
at least, are based upon the
Yep.
system that he put into place. So, my goodness, he deserves to be there. I'd love for it to be a sweep across the board. All 3 of them get in. I doubt if I'll get that wish, but boy, it sure seems like they deserve it, at least from a Denver Broncos perspective
Right.
and from Broncos country.
I totally agree.
Dang. I want to hit our sponsor just here real quick, Jody. At the Rocky Mountain Sports Network, we all know about wow. Let's just start that again. The Rocky Mountain Sports Network knows all about winning, as they provide great content for all sports all along the Rocky Mountain front. From Broncos to Rockies, Nuggets to Avalanche, Colorado Mammoth, X League football, and DU sports, you can find all the coverage and more on the Rocky Mountain Sports Network Facebook page. Man, not going to start off easy with my tongue tonight, but we'll get it exercised in. It needs a training camp. Maybe it needs some OTAs, you know, on my tongue, and then I'll be all set to go, buddy. I will say one thing, buddy. We're pretty lucky tonight. We're getting a little extra coverage tonight as well. We're going to actually have a little special guest coming in, so let's bring him in.
You talking to me?
Give him a heater.
You're the best. I'm the worst.
It's time to bring in the big guns.
Finally.
Here's the deal. I'm the best there is. Plain and simple.
Mr. Albert Knoppers, how we doing, sir?
We are doing great. And yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Doing fantastic. I appreciate you so much joining our show this evening, man. Hopefully you can help me with my tongue, as well as some of the questions we have about this roster.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I'm thankful for this opportunity.
Fantastic. So why don't you just give us a little bit about yourself? Just tell us how long you've been a Broncos fan, where you hail from, anything that's important to us.
So, a funny story. Back in Holland, I was a soccer player, and so American football was not that popular. So I came to the United States in 2004, and didn't get much introduced to football until 2012. I was at a friend's house, and he was watching the Broncos and the Raiders, even although he is a Seahawks fan. And what happened there with Peyton Manning got me hooked, and I've been a big fan since.
Well, I know there's been plenty of Denver Broncos fans out there, Broncos country, that fell in love with the Broncos because of Peyton Manning. Easy to do, man. That's a great time to be introduced.
I really enjoyed it, and now I can talk with other people and be annoying to them. I live in Chiefs country, so they are.
Ooh, that's rough, man.
It is a bit rough, but also fun.
Very good. You didn't have to peek out your windows before you put your hat on or anything like that. Make sure no one is looking. No, all right, not that bad. All right. Well, very good. Again, Albert, appreciate you coming on. Hopefully, between the three of us, maybe we can figure out something about our linebackers, our defensive line for our Denver Broncos. So let's get started, guys. I don't have any slides tonight as far as breaking down all of our roster, so I'm just going to kind of go through who's on the roster for us. So mind if we hit defensive line first?
Absolutely.
Go right ahead.
All right. So just a quick rundown for everybody, and I'll probably mispronounce at least two names, I imagine, in this list. So we got DJ Jones, Mike Purcell, Draymond Jones, McTelvin Agim, Deshaun Williams, Marquise Spencer, Jonathan Harris. Here's my first one, Ioma Uwazurki, and I don't know if that's correct, Matt Henningsen, and Jonathan Kongbo. So overall, we have a total of 10 guys on the roster. Just looking, at first I seen all these names, and I thought, how are we going to narrow this down, guys? I think we're going to be a little bit lucky in both of these position groups. Last year, we carried 8 guys total, 6 guys on the 53, 2 guys on the practice squad. So we really only have to look at 2 guys that may not make this roster. So, boy, let's start off with who we know is going to make the roster. Jody, why don't you give me a name and we can start going around the horn?
I think the obvious one is who they signed in free agency, DJ Jones.
Yeah, DJ Jones, obviously. Just a little side note, obviously I was going to mention this before we got started. We had losses and we had additions. You named our one addition, obviously, that we had on the defensive line in DJ Jones. We did have one loss, and that was in a trade, and that's Mr. Shelby Harris. So DJ Jones, really the man who's been brought in to replace Shelby Harris along this defensive front. Albert, who do you got making the roster, the lineup?
So I don't want to go for the most obvious, but I think that Ioma Uwazuriki will be one of the starters.
Very good. I'll bring you on just so that you can pronounce all the names for me. I appreciate that. Say that one more time for me.
Ioma Uwazuriki.
Uwazuriki. I'll try my best with that. Thank you. I appreciate that. He has a really good chance of making this roster. I agree. Right now, kind of listed as the third nose tackle on this. on this roster. Sorry, I got the noises falling all around me around here. So third on the nose tackle. So we'll have to see who gets shuffled out, maybe to the practice squad or out the door if Mr. Ioma Uwazurki. I'll just have you do it from now on.
Okay. So I think that Uwazuriki will drive off Mike Purcell. I think Mike Purcell might be a cut.
Ooh, all the way to the cut line. Dang.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had him in a little bit different spot, but we can get into that in a little bit. So I'll go with an easy one then. I don't mind taking the easy ones, Albert. I'll go with Draymond Jones. I think he makes the roster quite easily in the probably the right defensive end position. So back around to you, Mr. Jody.
I think McTalvin and Gene makes this roster. I think he's going to be when they are in base 3-4. I think he's going to look to push the start.
Okay.
I don't know what happened last year, what got him in the doghouse with Vic, but I mean, he probably was Denver's best pass rusher when he was on the field last year for a D lineman. So, I mean,
yeah, limited opportunities. Only got into 7 games. Never got a game start. McTelvin Najim, and I agree with you. I thought he had a lot more potential heading out of training camp and into the season last year. So, McTelvin Najim. How about you, Albert? It's starting to get a little more sticky now.
Yeah, Deshaun Williams. I see him as a potential rotational player. He had some great plays last year. I think with a little bit more experience under his belt, he could make a really great player for our defense.
That is my man to take over at nose tackle because I agree with you. I don't think that we see Mike Purcell come back in the nose tackle position. I think Deshaun Williams, he played 15 games, he had 8 starts. Put up a sack, had 5 quarterback hits. He was a good player for us all the way across the board. So, so now we're at 5. We only have one more spot on the front. So, it's getting a little bit tougher here. So we've got DJ Jones, Mike Purcell again. We've kind of talked about. We put Draymond Jones in, McTelvin Najim, Deshaun Williams in there, and again, Mr. Albert. Who else are we getting in there? Pronunciation again.
I think Matt Henningsen will be our practice squad. I think he needs a little bit more development, but from the videos what I've seen, he is a beast.
He is a large man. A little bit questionable right now, a little bit nicked up. We'll see what he does in training camp. That's the only downside to him coming in here. Huge gentleman that should make his presence known, though, and hopefully, like you said, he gets that practice squad as well. The big one for me, originally listed as the second at the right defensive end position. Again, Henningsen and Kongbo are the 2 gentlemen that sit behind him, was Marquise Spencer. And that's a gentleman that I don't believe is going to make the roster this year. Was brought in last year, actually even had a little bit of he appeared in 1 game as well. But I don't think he makes the 53. I don't think he makes the roster at all. So that's my guy.
I agree with that.
And how about you, Jody? Coming back around to you, what do you make of the rest of this roster? I know we've kind of picked it almost clean now, but
the big guys one left that we have not talked about. He was a starter last year, Mike Purcell.
Mm-hmm.
I think Denver switching defenses a little bit. I think they're going to run a lot of 2-4-5 or 4-2-5. Sorry.
That's
so
right.
You're going to have 2 D linemen, your 2 outside edge rushers. So you're only going to have 2 D linemen on the field a lot of the time. He is good in the run game, but he brings 0 to the pass rush. And everything that he can do, DJ Jones can do. And so I think he makes an easy – and you save on the cap with his money. So
exactly.
Yeah, I told you didn't make my cut as well, but I look at him as a possible trade candidate. Mike Purcell, hopefully not too big of a contract, but a gentleman that's played for some pretty decent snaps for us in years past. Last year, kind of didn't play up to where we expected him, but did appear obviously in 13 games, got 10 starts. I think he has some value. I'd be surprised if he makes it all the way down and off the roster altogether. So we got Matt Staffiero jumping in. He says Purcell on his way out, overvalued by previous coaching staff and his health concerns.
I agree with all of that.
Yep.
I mean, if we were going to run a traditional 4-3, and I think he would be all right, but we're not running that. And he brings 0 to the pass rushing game. So
yeah, I agree. Another gentleman coming in. Nobody talking about Allen from Alabama. I believe Allen is slated in the linebacking core, if I remember correctly. Andrew.
Correct.
We will actually be getting to that position group next. So, but I appreciate you jumping in and coming in. So Matt's also glad to see us tonight. So thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. So. All right. Anybody else that you guys see out there that's going to end up having to hit the trade block or being released outright? Where are we at on here? Jonathan Kongbo, I think I think he was brought in for a training camp body as Henningsen is a little bit banged up. I wouldn't doubt if he ends up kind of filling that hole until Henningsen is ready to go.
I do think they try to stash Jonathan Harris on the practice squad.
Yeah, Jonathan Harris got some decent time for us. So I would be surprised if he doesn't make it as well. So
if not him, the rookie from Iowa State, I'm not even going to try to butcher his name.
Very good.
I mean, I could see both rookies, getting stashed on the practice squad to start the season.
Yeah. We have 3, I believe, don't we?
Yeah, 3,
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I think even Jonathan Harris, he might even be cut because we have so much talent, and bits is a great thing. So if we're going to keep 5 or 6, then probably Jonathan Harris will be one of those who will be cut.
And I think that's a good point. Obviously, we're going off of 2021 roster numbers. This is a whole new coaching staff, coaching regime. And like you said, we have talent, not just in these couple of position groups that we're talking about, but across this roster. So if it means having to let a Jonathan Harris go in order to keep that extra wide receiver, in order to keep that extra cornerback, whoever it happens to be, that might be something that we see dribble down as well. So no telling exactly what those numbers are going to look like. We can only guess. Our 6 guys with 2 practice squatters is just a guess of coming off of 2021. So,
and if Peyton can get any sort of draft pick for one of these guys, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
that's what he's after. I mean, he gave up a lot to get Wilson, so he's doing all he can to replenish those draft picks.
and that's what I'm kind of hoping with Mike Purcell, even if it's a little bit larger salary and maybe we have to pick up a little bit of salary. Maybe we don't get the best draft pick in return necessarily, but we get something for him, right? 2 years ago, we were talking about Mike Purcell, and we were talking about how he was the cornerstone of our defense.
Right.
How he was going to anchor that front as hopefully Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, come around the edges. 2 years later, down the road, we're already looking at him as someone who's not valuable to this roster, but I think he actually holds more value than we see from our eyes, and I think in more NFL camps as well. So
I just think Denver's looking for pass rush this year. I mean, they got little to none last year, and he doesn't bring that. So
I think we will have at least 3 or 4 rushes pretty much every play. I think we are going to rush the heck out of the quarterbacks. We have to.
Yeah, we look like we're a pin back there at the ears, go at them just about every single down type of defense. You can tell this. There's been a strategic move in order to get faster and faster and faster. all the way across the line. So when we start looking at, linebackers, that'll even be more apparent in some of the guys that we have plugging and playing there as well. So it's going to be interesting. Like you said, I think it's going to be a lot of rushing, and quite honestly, with the and we'll get into this in probably the next week when we get into past our front seven and into our secondary. We have a secondary that can support that as well.
Yeah, and we were at the bottom 5 of turnovers last year. I think if we do it right, we can be in the top 10 this year. And
Big swing.
That's what it's going to look like.
Jody, do you agree? Do you think we could swing from the bottom to the top on turnovers?
Yeah, Denver we got a lot of question marks, but if they pan out, I can see big things. I think Chubb coming into this, to transition to the linebackers, I think Chubb is going to be one right away. He's going to be in training camp 100% healthy, and he knows this is a make or break year for him.
Yeah. One of those guys that, again, we'll get to it. Where do they end up overall? Do they end up on the roster? That's a big question mark. And you're talking about draft capital return. Some big possibilities there as well. We'll get into linebackers next. Just really quick, Paul Montoya coming in and saying Mike Purcell, ha ha ha. Who's that? So did kind of disappear for us last year. And rightfully so. Maybe a little harsh, but we understand completely. Like I said, who's that? Paul's also saying those who don't show up on defense this year won't be here next year. I also believe if Judy doesn't have a breakout season, we should move on from him. Wow. Interesting. It's a little bit early, I think, in his contract to be thinking about moving on. I think we want to get some performance out of him, at least if nothing else from a value standpoint before we move on. But offense another day. Let's take a little side step, gentlemen, and I'm just going to talk to you about one of our tell you and all our listeners about one of these fantastic companies we have. It's called Willow Seasonings and Blends. Check out their Sweet Heat all-purpose rub. This rub won the 2022 American Royal Best Rub on the Planet in the hot category. They have a great selection of rubs and just recently released their amazing Sweet and Tangy barbecue sauce. Whether it's a good rub or a great sauce, Willow Seasonings and Blends has your barbecue covered this summer. And right now, any new customers get an additional 15% off their already great prices by typing new15 into the coupon code box. That's NEW15 new15 to get an additional 50% off. Do me a favor, also put in the Denver Bronco Roundup in the comment box. It's our way of getting a little bit of credit for referring you and getting your mouth watering. Again, head on over to their website, willowseasonings.com, and spice up your life. So, all right, gentlemen, let's get started on linebackers. This one is another a group. Like I said, we have some losses and we have some new faces that came in. I think we should hit that first, and then we'll go into some of the other the holdovers or the returning and the rookies, I should say. Some big changes, some names that I thought last year were playing quite well for us, and maybe even over the last couple years. We have Alexander Johnson, big name for us. Jody, what is your response to Alexander Johnson being let go?
I think the pec injury, his age. He's an older player coming in late from college with all his off-field issues at Tennessee. And they have a guy that we'll get into in a little bit right behind him or on the roster now that I think is going to be a breakout candidate on defense this year. So, I mean, I think it was an easy choice not to bring him back.
All right, man. Yeah. One of the things I kind of alluded to in the last segment was just that speed and that change of speed. Alexander Johnson was just not known as that guy who was able to go out and get coverage on tight ends like we would like to see. That was another reason I see him going, and just didn't fit the scheme anymore of what we got going on. All right. Micah Kaiser, another gentleman that did quite well for us last year. Seemed like he came in, had some pretty good energy at times. Albert, what do you think about Micah Kaiser moving on to? By the way, Alexander Johnson is still a free agent. Micah Kaiser is now a Las Vegas Raider.
So, with all the talents that we have, I think Micah Kaiser fell in the shadows for me because I didn't hear so much about him. Even although he picked up for Jewel and Alexander Johnson a little bit, but you didn't hear too much from him.
I'll give you another one that we did hear a little bit more then, and then we
One
can
thing.
go go
Sorry,
ahead.
interrupt
Go
with
right ahead. Jump in,
Kaiser,
buddy.
I think one thing Denver will miss a little bit is he was pretty good on special teams, and I know that gets overlooked a lot. But I mean, you got guys on this team, special teams. I mean, that's what they're here for, to play special teams.
That's a good point, man, because honestly, that's one place that we absolutely need to improve in. And having a guy that was doing fantastic on special teams in Micah Kaiser is a spot you need to fill, even though last year, last few years, we've wanted and demanded more from our special teams. He was a shining star in that regard. Going just back to Albert real quick then, how about Kenny Young? Kenny Young is another gentleman. That's a name that we heard a little bit more often than Micah Kaiser, and he is also now a Las Vegas Raider. They're loading up.
And I think that letting Kenny Young go was a little bit of a mistake. He has a lot of potential. He just needed to have a little bit more opportunities than what he had last year. And I think Vic Fangio might be a really good coach, but I didn't think he was coaching to the strengths of the personnel that we have. And Kenny Young could have been maybe even a player that would break out this year. And I think we will see that with the other team.
Seeing Kenny Young going off in Las Vegas. Jody, do you agree?
No, I think he played all right for us last year. I think when we can get into it now, I think one of the reasons, or the main reasons he's gone, is Jonas Griffith. I mean, he balled out the second half of the season, and I expect big things from him this year, and I think the Broncos do as well. He's still on the cheap, and I think that is the main reason that some of these guys are not here right now is because of him.
Well said. Well said. Honestly, when I looked up and down off of who we lost versus who we have on the roster, I hit the roster first before we hit our losses, and I didn't. Once I went back to our losses, I went, oh well, those were guys that were fairly decent for us, but at the same time, I don't feel like we have holes on our roster because of these guys leaving at the same time. I think we filled very well, if not maybe gained a little bit in just about every position. So one last loss, I guess just needs to be mentioned, gentleman who played 7 games for us last year, and that was Von Miller. I don't know if we necessarily filled that hole last year, but we certainly will be looking to do it this year, of course. So,
you know, he was a fan favorite, and I mean, he always showed up in the big games. Even look at the Super Bowl. I mean, he had 2.5 sacks.
Yeah.
I mean, and I just think that George Payton wanted to move on. I mean, he was out there. He could have went and re-signed Vaughn. He was a free agent.
Yep.
He wants to start his own thing here, and that's why Vaughn's not. And Buffalo offered him a lot of money that really I'm surprised that anyone else did.
Yeah, massive contract, obviously, for Von Miller in Buffalo. Had no problem with him moving on where the team was at and what we got in return by dealing him to the Rams. Obviously, we always want to have Broncos for life, and some of those guys that those big names like Von Miller are those guys that you wish could finish out their career, but that's happening less and less as time goes by. So Von Miller is like, again, 7 games last year, put in some good years and some good games for us even last year before moving on.
I mean, he's a surefire Ring of Famer, surefire Hall of Famer. I mean, what more can you say? I mean, he almost single-handedly won us a Super Bowl.
Correct. Yeah, we can pretty much rack up our Super Bowl victory versus Cam Newton all up to Von Miller. That was a stellar performance. So, a good time to bring in some comments as well as we bring in our additions. Just a couple of additions. Alex Singleton was one coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles. Victor jumps in the conversation, says he thinks he beats out Jewell to start, and Browning and him can rotate. Another obvious addition.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
Debate that for a second. One, I think Browning they're moving him to outside linebacker. So, I mean, he is going to be a fallback guy that can be like a tweener, but he's working at outside linebacker. So I don't think he's really in the mix to get a lot of playing time at middle linebacker right now.
Yeah.
As for Alex Singleton, I mean, he led the Eagles the last 2 years in tackles, but a lot of that was special teams. He's going to be one of your core special teams guys, but they signed Josie Jewell right away this offseason. He was one of their top priorities. And to be honest, before the pec injury, whatever that was, week 4, he was balling out on defense. He was
looking good. He was
looking really good. So,
yeah. Albert, I guess since we stopped on this topic, Jody's not going to let me brush right past anything. So, jump in, give me your 2 cents on the same.
So yeah, Singleton, I think he will make definitely the roster, and especially because of his special teams ability. And I think he will just line up next to Jewell once in a while. Jewell is going to be our number 1 linebacker.
Yeah, Victor's not going to want to hear that, guys, but that's okay. He's not a big fan, so that's okay. Here, I was trying to search through it. Josie Jewell is less worth than $1. Victor coming in saying Josie Jewell is worth less than $1 because you can't even get 4 quarters out of him. He has had his injuries. He has something to make up for, and he has to get back on the field and start performing, as Jody mentioned, like he was early in 2021. I think he has that capability, but as you mentioned, not getting any stress from Alex Singleton because it's just not the same position. I do wonder if Browning will end up playing that. I'm sorry, Browning is who I'm at. I wonder if Browning's going to end up jumping back and forth a little bit. I know that the coaching staff has said they want him just in the outside linebacking position, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him a little bit inside, a little bit outside as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
That I worry about with him, I hope he doesn't turn into another, and his name is escaping me, the guy that from Oregon that went to the Rams. He started outside and then they moved him inside and wasn't good there, and he went to the Rams and he played decent in sparing time there. So I'm hoping that that's not what happens there.
Well, coaching staff is saying the opposite. Albert, go ahead.
Wasn't that Williams?
His name is escaping me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. And let's not forget about Josie Jewell, too. He is a leader in the back. He knows how to line up the people. He sees what the team needs to happen for that play. And that is one of the strengths of Josie Jewell. And I don't see that in Alex Singleton.
This is where we're going to have a little bit of differences, gentlemen, because I really like Alex Singleton, I'll be honest. He's just, from a special teams play to what I think he can deliver in, again, this defensive scheme where you have to be fast. Anymore, you have to be quick. And especially in this AFC West, if you're going to keep up with the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Raiders, you're going to have some linebackers that can be sideline to sideline, front to back. I think you're getting that out of Alex Singleton. Love his motor. Played 16 games last year. I mean, I know that, like you said, it was a lot of special teams. 137 tackles, though, is a monstrous number, regardless of how he's getting them. All of those couldn't have been on special teams because how many punts and kickoffs do you necessarily have? So,
shout out to Victor, Justin Hollins. That's who I was thinking, Justin Hollins.
Very good. Yeah, Justin Hollins. Yeah, that's a good man. I almost
hope
forgot
that
about that
he-
name.
I hope that's not what happens with Browning. I mean, be master one position, not 3 or 4.
Yep. So I'm going to go through this a little bit different this time. I'm going to just read off. This is according to ESPN, what they have the current roster set at for our linebacking core. Starting left side linebacker, Alex Singleton. Starting strong side linebacker, Randy Gregory. Weak side linebacker, Bradley Chubb. And right inside linebacker of Josie Jewell. Backing up Alex Singleton, you have Jonas Griffith. Backing up Josie Jewell, you have Justin Sternard. Backing up Randy Gregory, we have Malik Reed. And backing up, did I mess up my list? All right, weak side linebacker, we have, Nick Bonito backing up Bradley Chubb. It just keeps getting stronger and stronger after that. It seems like we just keep getting more and more names. If we start looking third string, we have names like Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning, and had one more here, but maybe I lost it. So those are the big names, I guess you can say, all the way across the board. We also have Barrington Wade, who had a little bit of time for us. And then we have, obviously, like gentlemen that our listener and our commenter came in with, like Christopher Allen, that comes in from Alabama. Strong guy who got injured and then end up being an undrafted free agent at college acquisition. So, boy, guys, what do you think about that lineup? Were you able to keep track of that as I ran around?
Yeah. For the most part, I agree. I've been high on Jonas Griffith for a while. I think he starts over Singleton.
Okay.
And a trade or cut guy, probably a cut guy, I think, is Justin Sternard. I mean, he looked bad last year coming off that hand injury. I mean, he was bad in coverage. He was bad making tackles. He just looked bad last year. And, I mean, you've got other guys there already, so –
who do you think slides over? Because really, when you move on from him, backing him up was Barrington Wade at the right inside linebacker position. So,
Barrington Wade. One, he makes this roster, I think, because of special teams.
Okay.
And then Baron Browning still. Baron Browning, I think he's still going to be a tweener.
Okay.
And you will see him at both positions, I think. So.
Gotcha. You got him floating inside now.
I do.
Covering that hole if you need be as for your backup. Gotcha. Albert, how are you feeling about that roster rundown?
I think we might see a surprise trade with Malik Reed. He was decent last year. He had his flashes, but he doesn't always finish. And I think that is one of the things that will maybe get him traded. There's enough interest for him and for other teams, so he will not be on the market for long. But yeah, now with Browning going to edge or rusher, Malik Reed might be a surprise victim.
What I see with Reed is, I think there's a good chance you might see Gregory start the season on PUP, and I think Reed is going to be a starter for this team in the beginning. And as Nick Bonito develops, I think you could see later down the line when they think Nick's ready, that then they look to trade Reed and slide Bonito into that third linebacker with Gregory when Gregory comes back healthy. I mean, Reed, for all his faults or whatever you want to say, he did lead this team in sacks the last 2 years.
Yeah, and for me, not to contradict, but that's where I feel like we're kind of lacking with Gregory in his injury. I don't know where we're going to be. We might have to start off the year looking at our second string guy, which would be Malik Reed, and then Baron Browning in the third spot at strong side linebacker. So I really like the idea of having Malik Reed in that position, at least to begin with. Don't get me wrong. Like you said, might be a tremendous trade value, especially with Baron Browning, like you said, being able to maybe fill in that void and be that second guy. Hopefully not have to be that guy starting day one, though. I'd love to see Randy Gregory hit the field. That talk about some numbers. Randy Gregory may not have played every single game when he was out there. He played 12 games, started 11. He had 6 sacks. He had 17 quarterback hits. I mean, he doesn't get a whole lot of tackles and tackles for losses. He's out there to try to get after the quarterback. And we're talking about pressure, and we're talking about turnovers and where we need to be. Well, when you start talking about 6 sacks and 17 quarterback hits, that's that relationship, Albert, like you said, in order to get him from the bottom of the heap all the way up to the top when it comes to turnovers. He's a very necessary piece, I think, for this defense to click in 2022.
And especially if both Chubb and Gregory are both on the field, who are you going to cover? A lot of last year's Bradley got double teamed a lot, so it wasn't easier for Malik Reed to follow through.
100%. It didn't put him in the position. It seemed like we were in the same scenario as quite honestly, we drafted Bradley Chubb for. He was supposed to play opposite Von Miller, and those two were supposed to be a terror for years to come. But unfortunately, what happened, these guys don't end up hardly ever being on the field together, and then one day Von Miller gets traded. Well, now here we are again. We have Randy Gregory. We have Bradley Chubb, and boy, would it be nice to see them both on the field. What do you think the chances of that is like to see both these guys on the field? How many games do we see together with both Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb on the field, Jody?
Oh, I don't know. It's a coin flip right now. I'm 50-50 if Gregory starts this season or if they put him on PUP.
All right.
I mean, from all reports, he's going to play no preseason games. He's going to do little to nothing in training camp. So, I mean, even if their goal is to have, and it is their goal to have him ready week 1, he hasn't lifted weights. I mean, he's going to be a little rusty. So that's why I don't think they look at trading Reed right away. And from all reports, Nick Bonito, I mean, he's had flashes, but he's not ready to be a day one starter.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's tough to come into the league, be that day one starter. I'll be interested to see what happens when training camp actually unleashes and we get guys with pads on out there and playing. It's a lot. I think it's very tough to try to recognize whether there's a flash on the field when you're just in OTAs and you're running around there, no pads. It'll be really interesting. We got a long comment, but this is one for Albert. So Cody says, I have to agree with Albert here. Definitely enough interest in Reed from other teams, and I like Jonathan Cooper as a second-year guy, hopefully getting more snaps on the edge. We have a great talent at linebacker to part ways with Reed. I feel like Cooper has in some ways been overlooked due to the amount of snaps he had, but the snaps he did have. Yeah, I read that wrong. He made them count. In 1 week alone, I believe he had 2 sacks against the Cowboys and multiple pressures. So Cody Peel coming in to Albert's rescue saying, get rid of Reed. We got Jonathan Cooper in the back, hanging in the wings, ready to take over.
I'd like to ask Cody something. If Gregory does start off on the PUP, do you feel Jonathan Cooper or Nick Bonito are ready for full-time starting reps week 1? That's where I think Reed, I mean, he's been a starter for the last 2 years, basically, and for all the negative you want to say, he did lead this team in sacks for the last 2 years. So, I mean, he was the one dependable person.
Yeah, there's a lot of love out there from Malik Reed. I know I was a Malik Reed fan all the time, and like you said, I'm in 100% agreement with you, Jody. With the injuries that we have in front, I would love to see somebody that can come in and be a day one starter and have that and hold that position, right? Not be a step backwards, not be a weakness on this team. Get to Victor really quick. He says trade Chubb, get something while he's worth something or before injury. He's been too injury prone. Start Cooper and have Bonito as second, and again cut Jewel. So He's going to rally on that. Albert, what do you think about the trade Chubb scenario?
It doesn't do us any good. We are on the hook for so many millions are already in the cap. Why not use him? Unless we can get all the cap money recuperated. But
Well,
other than that,
I believe, if I remember correctly, he's on the last year of his rookie deal, his fifth year of his rookie deal. So he's actually, I think
this
Am I
year they
wrong?
have this year they have the option to, it's make or break. Either they pick the 5th-year option up, or
gotcha.
that's why he's playing for a little bit, I think.
Okay.
I have a question for you guys though. If these guys say trade Chubb, what could you get for Chubb right now? I mean, I don't know that you could get anything more than what team's going to give you a 2 or a 3 or. I mean, was getting rid of that potential for a 5 or a 6? A 5 is probably a pipe dream. A 6 or a 7?
This is indeed a proof-it year for Bradley Chubb, for all the teams, because so far he has not been done his expectations.
Right. Even if I agree trading Chubb, what's his trade value? It's nothing. He has been hurt the last 2 years, and his potential is worth a lot more than a 6 or a 7 you're going to get for him.
You think he's only worth a 6 or 7 on the open market?
I don't see a team coming in offering a 3 or a 4. I mean, that's crazy to me.
No, I don't see 3 or 4. I think
like
if it was a 5th, it could be a 4th, just depending upon where they sit, where they fall in the in his performance or whatever have you. A 5th to a 4th, just depending. I mean, if he's a Pro Bowler, he's a 4th round pick. You know what I mean? If he's doesn't make an impact on the roster really, then we could be a 5th round pick. That's where I kind of see him coming in. Cody's answering you here, buddy. Nick Bonito, no, but from what I saw from Cooper, I think he's capable of giving us what Reed has given us, which is consistency. He has been great energy on the field and has a high motor. He's young, but something tells me this could be another Shaq Barrett scenario, and I hope we keep Cooper.
The only thing I see to that is if you trade Reed, I don't think Cooper starts day one. I think, or if Gregory does start on the PUP or gets hurt, I think Nick Bonito gets the first crack at it. So
that's what I think.
And that's just because where he was drafted and all of that. So
it's a good point. The draft pick and where you're taken in the draft, it can put a lot of pressure on a team.
And I haven't heard anything for a while, but I wonder how his hand's doing, Cooper's hand. I mean, he had that hand injury where he had to have surgery, and he missed all the OTAs and stuff with it. So reports are he's supposed to be ready for training camp, but I mean, that's a wild card. I mean, for a linebacker that's using their hands to swipe and get linemen's hands off of them, I mean,
that's one of the things what I like about management right now. They don't hesitate. Oh, you need to get treatment? Let's get you the treatment done. And not like with what they did with Chubb. Oh, you can wait another month and see what happens. And that's part of what Chubb is suffering from too, bad management.
Yeah, I would agree. It seems like as of lately, we've been a lot better about making sure that, hey, if this guy's not ready, he's not on the field, and he's sitting out, and he's not coming out until he is ready. Because quite honestly, when we have had guys return to the field, they've returned to the field, it seems, in full form, rather than that 70% that we a lot of times we see return to the field. Good point, Albert. I appreciate that.
And that's the one thing with Gregory. That was a head scratcher to me. If he knew he needed the surgery, why wait till unless he was trying to get out of OTAs and all this, why didn't he do this right after the season? He knew it needed done.
Yeah.
It might not have been his choice. The Dallas Cowboys might have said, you're going to wait until we get you on the market. It might have been the Dallas Cowboys. Because if they take care of his treatment, then his market value goes down.
Yeah, whether
I can see that.
Team or agent or player, sometimes that decision is made that leaves us all scratching our heads. I've known that many a times as we've seen guys get injured at the end of the year, and it's months later before we see them actually get the surgery necessary, which delays them coming into training camp, coming into OTAs. And And sometimes, again, that's not decisions made by the player. So good point, Albert. I appreciate that. So really, guys, I know that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and who knows who's going to make the roster and who's going to make the practice squad. But my calculations, we do need to get rid of just a couple of names. I don't know if you guys have the full roster in front of you, sitting in front of you right now. But any names right off the top that you just don't think make this roster, get cut, or I guess get traded to eliminate two spots on this roster in the linebacking group?
Justin Cernat for me, number one.
Okay.
I mean, I thought he looked bad last year. Plus the hand injury. I mean, he missed tackles. He couldn't cover. I mean, I think he is a short timer on this roster.
Albert,
Yeah. I will save you the difficult name, Kanala Mauga.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Don't think he gets brought in, huh?
And maybe practice squad at the most. Most.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a lot of these guys obviously down at the bottom of the pack. And Aaron Patrick, who's a fourth string strong side linebacker, even though he appeared in 12 games for us last year, might be a guy that I might have off this roster as well. It's honestly, when we had to start talking about, hey, should we get rid of a Bradley Chubb? Should we trade away a Malik Reed? We're in a unique position to where we're actually pretty stocked up, pretty good in this linebacking group, a place I don't think we've necessarily been across the board. If we were going to say there's a weak spot on this linebacking, I guess this linebacking room or this linebacking group, Jody, where's your weak spot that you would love to see improvement in?
It's got to be up the middle. I mean, what's Josie Jewell going to look like coming off that pec injury? What is Jonas Griffith or Alex Singleton going to look like as a full-time starter?
Yeah.
I mean, they've never been a starter before. How does that pan out?
And we might see a little surprise that Alexander Johnson still comes back at a really cheap price.
Yeah, there's always that possibility. He's still sitting out there on the free agent market. He hasn't ruled his return out. The Broncos haven't kissed him goodbye, I guess you could say is the best way to put it, in any of their talks. So it hasn't been we wish him well with his new team as we're not bringing him back type of language. So there's always that possibility as well. I tell you, like I said, it made me feel a lot better once I started looking at this roster and realizing the depth we had, getting rid of, or at least letting go initially, Alexander Johnson, Kenny Young, Micah Kaiser, even Von Miller being gone, and still be talking about, do we trade a Bradley Chubb? Do we get rid of a Malik Reed or trade a Malik Reed? Conversations we've had this evening that just, I guess, paints the story of the depth of this Denver Broncos defense. And as Albert said, he expects the turnovers to be completely flipped around. Jody, where do you expect this overall defense to rank come 2022?
Yeah, overall defense. I mean, you were the top 3 defense last year, with little to no pass rush, no sacks, no turnovers. I mean, I think of healthy Chubb, you're going to see a lot from Chubb this year. I think if Gregory comes back healthy, I think you'll see the same from him. And I think you have a top 5 defense here. I mean, you've got, in my opinion, and I heard this from ESPN, you've got PS2. He was rated the number 7 corner in the NFL. You got Justin Simmons, the number 1 safety in the NFL. And you've got guys that are going to surprise. That's why I don't listen to the national media so much when they say Denver's weak at linebacker, because I think they're underestimating some of these guys that they just look at stats and say, oh, he's never been good or stuff like that. I mean, I'm really high on Jonas Griffith this year. From what I've seen last year, he's going to be the real deal if he can stay healthy.
Albert, you're nodding your head a lot over there. Seems like you're in agreement. Why don't you talk a little bit about what this defense is going to look like?
Well, like I said in the beginning, they hardly did any pass rush. Maybe 1 in 10 plays they had a pass rush. I think now it's going to be 8 out of 10 plays will be pass rushing, and with 3 or 4. So it's gonna create turnovers because you are rushing the quarterback. So it's
Yep.
gonna be a complete different of defense.
Yeah, it's the idea that this Denver Broncos defense has put together. Like I said, all speed, bringing in guys like Randy Gregory, who brings in quarterback pressure, quarterback hits. Jonas Griffith, what he's been able to show off the corner as well so far in OTAs. People have been really excited about his speed, his bend around the corner as well. Um, it could be very, very fun. And just like I heard, as you mentioned, Jody, I heard some national pundits also out there talking. I also heard him talking about a completely different team, but along this subject and the fact that, hey, if you have a good secondary, that's going to help those pass rushers. And like
Right.
if you have good pass rushers,
It
that's going
helps
to
the
help that
secondary.
that secondary. Well, guess what? If you have a great secondary and you have a great pass rush, I don't want to hear about the linebackers because quite honestly, they're not going to be coming into play all that often. If one helps the other and the other helps the other, boy, if you have your front four and your back four, I guess it would be at that point, just depending upon your configuration, playing tremendously. That linebacking core, I think, will be just fine, even if they're just a little bit in the shadows of these two juggernauts on defense in those two position groups.
Hmm.
Well, gentlemen,
And
go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jody. You got something more?
Well, I think also one thing to not overlook is you're going to get pass rush from your D line this year. You didn't get that last year at all.
I
DJ
agree.
Jones will rush the passer, and I almost am pretty sure that Calvin McGeem is not in the doghouse anymore for whatever reason he was last year, and he was a pass rusher last year for Denver.
I agree, and I think Albert agrees. I think we're all on the same page here. It'll be interesting to see what Denver is able to do. Last year, I know that all Broncos fans were out there many times frustrated with the pass rush that we got from our front four, especially when we needed it the most. It seemed like we had no ability to get there. This year should be different. We brought in guys. We're faster. We have a little bit different scheme, though they are carrying over a lot of the concepts from last year. These guys will be comfortable. I think they'll be flying around and we'll have as you guys mentioned, I think we'll have a top five defense, and maybe, as Albert mentioned, have the ability to be a top 5 turnover defense as well. So, well, gentlemen, I don't know if you noticed, but we put a little poll out there just a little bit ago, or we put a poll out every single week on the Denver Bronco Roundup page. It was a pretty fun last week. We had a ton of response. This week we also had a pretty good response. We had over 100 responses, and it was a pretty simple question. I want to pull up a slide if I can. So, really, what it came down to was uniforms, and the uniforms that I chose was the old. Oops. I say oops as I'm trying to pull up all my stuff. The old uniforms in 1986, and the new uniforms that we have currently. Let me see if I can bring this up. It'll make a lot more sense once I can get up the graphics. Jody's like, "Oh, please get the graphic up." Such excitement on your face, Jody. Appreciate it. All right, so here we are, man. Old school versus new school. We have those 86 big D on the helmet, big bold stripes, Terrell Davis chugging down the field, Broncos uniforms. On the right, we have the new school. We have a little Javonte Williams as he's busting through the line, probably fourth tackle he's broken at that point, I think, and continuing to go down the road. But gentlemen, why don't you weigh in? I believe Albert did on one of our he was one of our voters, but Jody, I don't know if I got yours. We'll start with you.
I was a big old school. I liked the lighter color blue, and I love the logo on the helmet, the old school logo. This one I'm used to it now, but was not a huge new school logo guy.
Not over the moon, huh?
Not over the moon.
Albert, how about you? What was your vote?
My vote was new school because since 2012 I've been a fan, so I didn't see many of the old school. But what I would like to see is the old school D, with the new horse header in there.
Well, Albert, I'll be honest. You're not the only person to think that way. My 100+ votes, I didn't even include the ones that were write-ins, and there was a lot of people who wanted a mix of the uniforms, the new and the old, the old helmet, the new uniforms. Maybe bring the blue over from the old uniforms into the new uniforms in order to try to make that work and get it all to tie together. There was a lot of debate about that as well. You know, the other big debate was how many Super Bowls we've won in each uniform. That was a driving force for people who wanted the new uniforms, since we never won a Super Bowl in the old uniforms. If you want my 2 cents, it's probably I'm a lot like Albert. It probably has a lot to do with when I was introduced, and what introduced me was those old school uniforms. I remember one year as I was sitting and preparing to watch a losing Super Bowl by my Denver Broncos at the time. And my sister walked by the living room and she's like, "Oh my gosh, Keith, you look like a construction cone," as I was all dressed out in orange, sitting in there. I think I had socks and a scarf on and a hat and you name it, just anything I could put on Broncos. Probably dying of the heat at the moment, but I was going to support my team nonetheless. So I'm an old school guy myself. Well, guys, how do you now I'm going to ask you, we'll start Jody first. How do you think this end up turning out when we put it out to Broncos country?
New school. I think new school won.
And Albert, what do you think?
It's a toss-up. I would say old school, I would say.
You're going to go old school. Jody's going new school. I'll be honest, it was a toss-up. It was a really close race comparatively to my kicker race that I put up last week on the poll. So without further ado, here are the results. We have old school coming in at 52.9% and new school coming in at 47.1%. So Broncos country wanting to switch back to maybe those old school uniforms. Albert, I'm sorry. It looks like Jody and me can maybe win out. We like some old school uniforms, and so does the rest of Broncos country. Sorry, buddy.
So I want to give you some extra food for thought. Have you seen some of the Walmart shopping carts that are orange and blue?
I can't say that I have, but
I'm
here in Montana, so
Okay.
maybe that's a little something to do with it.
So the blue of the Walmart shopping carts is the lighter blue from the old uniforms. So we might go back there.
Oh no, he's making a correlation between the Walmart purchase, the Walton Group, the Walmart shopping cart, and us rolling down the field in our new uniforms, looking like said shopping cart, maybe. Oh no, Albert, I don't know if I like that correlation, buddy.
So when I see one of those, I will take a picture of him.
You should post. Hey, if you get a chance, jump over onto the Denver Bronco Roundup poll and go ahead and post it right up there. I would love to see it on it. That'd be funny. So, all right, guys.
As long as they don't go back to the brown and yellow, I'm happy.
No.
There's one that I absolutely love. I love maybe it's just the corniness, the cheesiness of it, but the Bronco player on top of the horse, kind of riding him. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, that logo that they used to have. Man, I would love to see that introduced in a throwback at least sometime. I'm not saying that this should be instituted full time, but for a throwback jersey, I would love to see that hit the field someday. That would be fantastic. So, at least in my opinion, you don't have to agree. All right, guys. Last little bit, we're on the tail end. Little Broncos trivia. Last week we asked the following question: before 2021, who was the last Denver Bronco running back to score 10 rushing touchdowns in the regular season? Jody was on here. He said that. If I remember, oh no, I'm sorry, that wasn't Jody. That was our good friend, another co-host. He guessed C.J. Anderson. Do you guys have any guesses? or did you already cheat and know the answer?
I knew the answer.
You knew the answer right off the top?
Mm-hmm.
No Sean Moreno. No
Yep.
Sean Moreno was the gentleman who did that. So, well, congratulations, Albert. I'll be honest, I would have had no clue. Would have had no clue. I'm not really good at trying to remember back and trying to get that recall all that information. But no Sean Moreno was the man. Jody, did you have that in your data bank?
I had it between him and C.J. Anderson, but when you really stop to think about it, I mean, they were throwing the ball all over the place when Manning was here with C.J. So, I mean, Noshawn was only here, the 1 year?
Yeah.
2 years?
2 years, I think so.
But in the beginning, Biff Manning, before CJ came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I have another one for you this week. Again, if you want to see the response, check out the Denver Bronco Roundup Facebook page or the Rocky Mountain Sports Network Facebook page tomorrow. You'll get your answer there in both locations. So let's see if either one of you guys can maybe guess it. Again, I'm not going to tell you if you're right, but you'll find out tomorrow if you are. In 1968, the Denver Broncos wanted to expand their stadium, but the Colorado taxpayers voted against a $250,000 proposal. The Broncos ownership considered moving the team. What city was the leading candidate? And anybody out there listening along, feel free, jump on in. By the way, Cody Peel also got no Sean Moreno. Congratulations, Cody. And just really quick, David Slade says, I love the throwback brown and yellows we wore. So Dave's against you a little bit there. That was the old those brown and yellows were, if I remember right, were college holdover jerseys that we had for our first couple of years, and that was it from Arizona Rattlers, if I remember correctly. So gentlemen, where were in 1968? The Broncos almost picked up and moved. Any guesses on where they were heading?
Well, I have no.
By the way, there was actually three cities that were actually named. So if you don't get the top one, I'm okay if you get number 2 or number 3. I'll let you know maybe then.
See, 1968 was the year I was born. Now you know how old I am.
Oh, there you go.
I would say they would stay in the Rocky Mountains, and I would say Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City Broncos. Jody, what's your thoughts?
I'm going to say Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Good old Cheyenne, Wyoming. Well, I can tell you that the leading team, or the leading city, was nowhere near the Rocky Mountains. But I'll let you guys know exactly what that looks like tomorrow. Again, check out the Denver Bronco Roundup page. Check out Rocky Mountain Sports Network. We'll have you the name of the town that the Denver Broncos almost moved to in 1968. So, well, that wraps up our show for tonight. Again, join us next week. We are finishing out our training camp preview. Some important position groups for the Broncos. We're going to look at safeties, cornerbacks, and special teams. Until then, please like, follow, and subscribe. You can find this and other podcasts through the Rocky Mountain Sports Network. And you can find us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Really quick, gentlemen, before we get out of here, any last words from you, Mr. Albert? Thanks again so much for jumping on. I really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
I really enjoyed it too. Hall of Fame. Why has Carl Mecklenburg not been nominated yet? I think he deserves to be in there.
I 100% agree. The Ramblin' Wreck, Carl Mack. Yeah, he was one of my favorites back in the day. He should be on that list, and I think we'll see him coming in the next couple of years. But again, one of those guys where it seems like it's taken way too long, especially when it comes to the Denver Broncos. Jody, what do you have?
We're training camp 2 weeks away. I'm excited for that. Got a little downtime in sports, so I'm ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Training camp, like you said, just a couple of weeks away. Really excited for that. Looks like my plans, Jody, might work out. I might have that full announcement of heading down to training camp and taking in a little bit of that action. So that's really what I have to finish it up for today. Again, Thank you so much. I appreciate all the listeners, all the conversation, all the comments. I appreciate my great co-host, Jody. I appreciate our special guest, and Albert coming on
Yes,
as
thank
well.
you, Albert.
You guys
Very
are
enjoyed.
fantastic show. I really appreciate all your help tonight, breaking down what the linebackers and the defensive line is going to look like for the Broncos in 2022. And until that, I guess, until next week, until next Tuesday, a little mile high salute from everybody, and we'll get out of here. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.